During the reading of my ex-wife's will, my son Trent leaned back in his chair like he already owned all $28 million. And then Jace Arnell turned a page, read one sentence out loud, and I watched Trent's smile collapse as if someone had cut the power. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Before we continue, we ask you to hit the hype button, subscribe, and like the video to help the channel grow. Tell us which city you are from in the comments. We would like to get to know our audience better. Let me back up 3 hours. I arrived at Arnell & Partners at 2:15 that Tuesday afternoon. The law office occupied the third floor of a renovated brick building in downtown Columbus, the kind of place that tried too hard to look historic while hiding modern security cameras behind fake crown molding. I'd spent 30 years as a construction safety inspector, so I noticed these things. The structural details, the weak points, the places where people cut corners. Jenna was already waiting in the lobby when I got there. My current wife, I should say, though after 12 years together the word current felt unnecessary, stood by the window with her arms crossed, watching the street below. She turned when she heard my footsteps. "He's already here," she said quietly. "Of course he is." "Finn." Her voice carried that particular warning tone she used when she thought I might say something I'd regret. "Try to stay calm." "I'm always calm." "You know what I mean." I did. She meant that Trent had a gift for getting under my skin, for finding exactly the right words to make my jaw clench and my hands ball into fists. He'd inherited that talent from neither of his parents. Loraine had been direct, but never cruel, and I'd always believed in saying what needed to be said without the verbal acrobatics. Trent must have picked it up somewhere else, or maybe he'd just cultivated it himself, the way some people cultivate poisonous plants because they like the danger. We took the elevator to the third floor. The receptionist, a young woman with serious eyes and a phone headset that looked surgically attached, checked our names against a list and directed us down the hall to conference room B. Trent was already seated at the long mahogany table. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my truck, and his hair was gelled back in that style that always made me think of Wall Street movies. He glanced up when we entered, and for just a second I saw something flicker across his face. Not quite surprise, more like calculation. "Dad," he said, nodding. Then, with notably less enthusiasm, "Jenna." My wife smiled tightly and took a seat 3 chairs away from him. I sat beside her. The conference room smelled like leather and old paper and the faint chemical tang of whatever they used to polish the table. Trent drummed his fingers against the armrest. "How long is this going to take? I've got a client call at 4. "As long as it takes," I said. He made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Right. Well, let's hope Jace doesn't drag this out with a bunch of legal nonsense." Legal nonsense. That was how Trent talked about everything that didn't immediately serve his interests. Contracts were nonsense. Regulations were nonsense. His mother's detailed instructions for how to handle her estate, I had no doubt he'd call those nonsense too, if he thought he could get away with it. The door opened and Jace Arnell entered, carrying a leather portfolio under one arm and a coffee mug in the other. He was 47, with graying temples and the kind of steady, unreadable expression that came from 20 years of dealing with grief, greed, and family dysfunction in equal measure. "Good afternoon," he said, setting his mug down and taking his seat at the head of the table. "Thank you all for coming. I know this is a difficult time." Trent shifted impatiently. Jenna sat perfectly still. I watched Jace's hands as he opened the portfolio and withdrew a stack of documents, each page marked with colored tabs. "Before we begin," Jace continued, "I want to remind everyone that this reading is a formality required by Ohio state law. The will has already been filed with the probate court, and its contents are a matter of public record. What we're doing here today is ensuring that all relevant parties understand the terms and have an opportunity to ask questions." "Understood," I said. Trent said nothing. His leg bounced under the table, making the whole surface vibrate slightly. Jace cleared his throat and began reading. The opening paragraphs were standard legal language, declarations of sound mind, revocations of previous wills, appointments of executors. Trent's leg kept bouncing. I could feel Jenna's tension radiating from the seat beside me. Then Jace reached the section about assets. "I, Loraine Marie Harlow, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath my entire estate to my son, Trent Michael Harlow, including but not limited to all real property, financial accounts, business holdings in Harlow Family Bakeries, and personal effects." Trent's legs stopped bouncing. He sat up straighter, and I saw the corners of his mouth twitch upward. $28 million. That's what the preliminary estate valuation had come back at. $28 million in bakeries, real estate, investment accounts. and the accumulated wealth of 3 generations of Harlows who'd known how to run a business without running it into the ground. Loraine had built that empire herself, expanding her family's original 2 locations into a regional chain of 17 commercial bakeries supplying restaurants, hotels, and grocery stores across 5 states. She'd worked 70-hour weeks. She'd negotiated with suppliers and contractors and union reps. She'd modernized the equipment, streamlined the logistics, and turned a comfortable family business into something genuinely impressive, and Trent had called it a dinosaur. I remembered that conversation. It had been 3 years ago, right after Lorraine's diagnosis. We'd been divorced for 8 years by then, but we'd stayed friendly, respectful. When she told me about the illness, I'd offered to help however I could. Trent had said she was being dramatic, said she'd probably be fine, and even if she wasn't, did she really need him to drive her to appointments like she was helpless? He'd called her clingy when she asked him to visit. He'd called her old-fashioned when she tried to explain the business to him. And he'd called the bakeries, her life's work, a dinosaur. But now, sitting in this conference room with $28 million on the line, Trent looked like a man who'd just won the lottery. Jace turned a page. However, he read, and Trent's smile faltered. The inheritance is subject to the following conditions. The room got very quiet. The sole executor, Finn Harlow, must review and approve all ethical and financial qualifications of the heir before any transfer is allowed. Trent's face went through 3 distinct expressions in the span of 2 seconds. Confusion, disbelief, and then something much darker. What? His voice came out strangled. Jace looked up calmly. Your mother appointed Finn as executor with full discretionary authority over the inheritance transfer. You cannot access any portion of the estate without his explicit approval. That's... Trent stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. That's not possible. She wouldn't do that. I assure you, these are her wishes, clearly stated and legally binding. Trent turned to me. His face had gone red. You convinced her to do this. I had nothing to do with it, I said evenly. Liar. Jenna touched my arm gently, a reminder to stay calm. I didn't need it. I felt calm. Calmer than I'd felt in months, actually. Trent was staring at me like I'd just stabbed him in the back, but I hadn't done anything. Loraine had, and she'd done it for a reason. Jace continued reading, laying out the specific requirements. Financial transparency, ethical conduct, proper respect for the business legacy. Any violation of these standards gave me the authority to suspend the transfer indefinitely. By the time Jace finished, Trent looked like he might put his fist through the mahogany table. This is unacceptable, he said. I understand your frustration, Jace replied, but the will is valid and enforceable. Then I'll contest it. That's your right, though I should warn you that your mother anticipated that possibility and left very detailed documentation of her reasoning. Trent grabbed his jacket from the back of his chair and headed for the door. He paused with his hand on the handle and looked back at me. My son told me I would not get anything from my ex-wife's $28 million will, he said, his voice low and dangerous. That's what you're thinking, isn't it? That you've got leverage now, that you can control me. I'm not thinking anything, I said. I'm just following Lorraine's instructions. He made that sound again, not quite a laugh, more like a growl. We'll see about that. Then he was gone, the door slamming behind him hard enough to rattle the framed certificates on the wall. Jenna let out a long breath. Well, that went about as well as expected. Jace set the documents aside and took a sip of his coffee. He'll calm down once he's had time to process. You don't know Trent, I said. I found out just how right I was about 40 minutes later, in the parking garage beneath the building. Jenna and I had stayed to ask Jace a few follow-up questions about the executor responsibilities and the timeline for probate. By the time we left, the afternoon had turned gray and cold, with that particular November dampness that cuts right through your jacket. Our cars were parked on the 2nd level. We took the stairs because the elevator was slow, and I'd never trusted elevators anyway. Too many things that could go wrong mechanically. Halfway down the stairwell, I heard voices echoing up from below. One of them was Trent's. I held up a hand, and Jenna stopped beside me. We both listened. Just a formality, Trent was saying. The old man won't actually block anything. He doesn't have the spine for it. Another voice responded. Male, younger. I didn't recognize it. But if he does? Then I'll make his life so miserable he'll beg me to take the money and leave him alone. Trust me, he's got enough skeletons that one phone call to the right people could bury him. I felt Jenna's hand tighten on my arm. Besides, Trent continued, my mother was clearly not in her right mind when she made these changes. Anyone can see that. I'll have the whole thing overturned within 6 months, and Dad will end up paying my legal fees out of his own pocket. The other voice laughed. You've got it all figured out. I always do. Footsteps echoed across the concrete, moving away from the stairwell. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, then continued down. The parking garage was dim and cold, lit by fluorescent tubes that hummed like failing insects. Our cars were parked side by side near the exit ramp. Trent's black BMW was nowhere in sight. He must have left through the other exit. Did you hear that? Jenna said quietly. Every word. He's going to fight you on this, Finn. Really fight you. I know. She studied my face in the weak light. And you're okay with that? I thought about Loraine in the hospital during her final weeks. She'd been weak by then, her body failing, but her mind had stayed sharp until almost the very end. She'd asked me to visit, and I'd come every day. We'd talked about a lot of things, the past, our mistakes, the ways we'd both failed as parents. But mostly we'd talked about Trent. I don't understand what happened to him, she'd said one afternoon, her voice thin and tired. I tried to raise him right. I really did. I know you did. But somewhere along the way, he started to think the world owed him something, that he deserved success without effort, respect without earning it. She'd paused, struggling for breath. And now he looks at me like I'm just an obstacle, something between him and what he wants. I hadn't known what to say to that. What could you say? She was gravely ill, and her son couldn't be bothered to visit more than once a month. Couldn't be bothered to hide his impatience when she tried to talk to him about the business. Couldn't be bothered to pretend he cared about anything except his inheritance. If something happens to me, Loraine had said, promise me you'll make sure he doesn't destroy everything I built. Promise me you'll teach him something, even if it's just a lesson about consequences. I'd promised. Now, standing in that cold parking garage with my wife beside me and Trent's words still echoing in my head, I remembered that promise. Yeah, I told Jenna. I'm okay with it. We drove home separately. She had to stop at the grocery store, and I wanted to go straight back to the house. We lived in a quiet suburb north of Columbus, in a neighborhood of modest two-story homes with decent yards and trees that were just starting to lose their leaves. I pulled into the driveway and sat in the truck for a moment, engine idling, heat blasting from the vents. The house looked exactly the same as it had this morning. Same beige siding, same black shutters, same front porch with the 2 rocking chairs that Jenna had insisted on buying even though we never actually sat in them. Nothing had changed, except everything had. Inside, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. Jace had given me copies of all the relevant documents, the will, the estate inventory, the business valuations, and something else. A sealed envelope that Loraine had left specifically for me, with instructions that I could open it after the will reading. I looked at that envelope for a long time before I finally broke the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, covered in Lorraine's careful handwriting. Finn. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've just sat through what was probably a very uncomfortable meeting with Trent. I'm sorry for putting you in this position. I know it's not fair to ask you to clean up the mess I helped create. But I don't trust anyone else to do it. You know my son better than anyone except me. You know his strengths, and yes, he does have some, even if they're buried pretty deep right now. You also know his weaknesses, his arrogance, his entitlement, his complete inability to understand that actions have consequences. I made a mistake, Finn. I gave him too much too easily. I tried to show him love by removing obstacles, but all I did was teach him that obstacles don't exist, that he can have whatever he wants without working for it. The conditions in my will are my last attempt to fix that mistake. If Trent can prove himself, if he can show genuine respect for what I built, if he can demonstrate basic ethical behavior, if he can just be a decent human being for once, then give him the inheritance. He's earned it. But if he can't, if he tries to cheat or manipulate or force his way around the rules, then don't give him a cent. Let him fail. Let him learn what it means to actually lose something. I know that sounds harsh, but I've watched him hurt people for years now, including you, and I can't let him use my legacy to hurt anyone else. There's one more thing you should know. I've left instructions with Vivienne Holder. You remember Vivienne, my old business partner? She has information about some financial irregularities I discovered in the months before I got sick. Irregularities involving Trent. I didn't want to believe it at first, but the evidence is there. Talk to Vivienne. She'll explain everything. Thank you, Finn, for everything. For the good years we had together, for being a better father than I was a mother, and for this last favor. Take care of yourself. Loraine. I read the letter 3 times. Financial irregularities. Involving Trent. I pulled out my phone and found Vivian's number in my contacts. She answered on the second ring. "Finn," she said. Her voice was warm but cautious. "I've been expecting your call. Loraine mentioned you might have some information for me." "I do. Can you come by tomorrow morning, around 10? "I'll be there." "Good. And Finn, be prepared. What I'm going to show you, it's not pleasant." I thanked her and ended the call. Then I sat there in the quiet kitchen, staring at Lorraine's letter until I heard Jenna's car pull into the driveway. Vivian Holder's office was located in a renovated warehouse near the original Harlow Bakery location, where Lorraine's grandparents had started the business back in 1952. The building still smelled faintly of yeast and sugar, even though the actual baking had moved to larger facilities years ago. Vivian met me at the door. She was 60 years old, with steel gray hair cut short and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She'd been Lorraine's friend since college, her business partner for 2 decades, and one of the few people who'd been brave enough to tell Loraine the truth about Trent years ago. "Coffee?" she offered. "Please." We sat in her office, a practical space with metal filing cabinets, a desk covered in paperwork, and a window overlooking the street. She poured 2 cups from a carafe and pushed one across the desk to me. "I'm sorry about Loraine," she said. "She was one of the best people I've ever known." "She was." Vivian took a sip of her coffee, studying me over the rim of the cup. "Did you open her letter?" "Last night." "Then you know there's a problem." She mentioned financial irregularities. "That's putting it mildly." Vivian set down her cup and pulled a thick folder from her desk drawer. She opened it carefully, like she was handling something toxic. About 6 months before Lorraine's diagnosis, she noticed some discrepancies in one of the bakery accounts. Small amounts at first. 500 here, 1,000 there. Nothing that would trigger immediate red flags, but enough to catch her attention. She spread several bank statements across the desk. I leaned forward, scanning the highlighted entries. "She started digging," Vivian continued, "and she found a pattern. Money being transferred out, usually right before major equipment purchases or payroll periods. The transfers were always listed as consulting fees or advisory services. Legitimate-sounding categories. But they weren't legitimate? No. The consulting company they were supposedly paying? It existed only on paper, and when Loraine traced the ownership, she found Trent's name. I felt something cold settle in my chest. He was stealing from her. While she was still healthy and running the business. While she was paying for his apartment and his car and his lifestyle. Vivian's jaw tightened. And then, when she got sick, he increased the frequency, took larger amounts, like he knew he had to get what he could before she noticed or before someone else took over the books. I looked at the statements again. The numbers blurred together, but the pattern was clear. Trent had been systematically draining money from his mother's business for at least a year before her diagnosis, maybe longer. "How much total?" I asked. "Just over $200,000. $200,000. Stolen from his own mother while she was building a legacy she hoped to leave to him?" "Why didn't she confront him?" I said. Vivian's expression softened. "You know why, Finn. She kept hoping he'd stop, that he'd realize what he was doing and fix it himself. She didn't want to believe her own son was capable of that level of betrayal." "But she documented everything." "Yes, she wanted proof, in case—" Vivian trailed off, then finished quietly. "In case she needed it later. In case someone needed to hold him accountable." I gathered the statements and tucked them back into the folder. "Can I take this?" "It's yours. She left specific instructions that you should have access to everything." I stood, folder under my arm. "Thank you, Vivian." "There's one more thing." She walked to her filing cabinet and pulled out a sealed envelope. "She left this too, said you should open it only if Trent tried to contest the will or challenged your authority as executor." The envelope was thick, and I could feel multiple pages inside. "What is it?" "I don't know." She sealed it herself and told me not to look. Vivian handed it to me. But whatever it is, she thought it was important. I drove home with the folder and the envelope on the passenger seat. My hands were steady on the wheel, but my mind was racing. Trent hadn't just been disrespectful. He hadn't just been neglectful. He'd been actively stealing from Loraine while she was alive, then positioned himself to inherit everything after she was gone, and he'd almost pulled it off. If Loraine hadn't added those conditions to her will, if she hadn't made me executor, Trent would have walked away with $28 million and complete control of a business he'd already proven he couldn't be trusted with. When I got home, Jenna was in her office, a small room off the main hallway that she'd converted into a workspace. She worked in logistics coordination for a regional shipping company, which meant she spent most of her day staring at spreadsheets and solving problems that involved trucks, warehouses, and delivery schedules. It also meant she knew how to track information and spot inconsistencies. I knocked on the doorframe. She looked up from her computer, saw my face, and immediately knew something was wrong. What happened? I showed her the folder. It took her about 20 minutes to go through everything. She didn't say anything while she read, just made occasional notes on a legal pad. When she finished, she looked up at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "This is bad, Finn." "I know." "No, I mean, this is really bad. If Trent was willing to steal from his mother while she was alive, what do you think he'll do now that she's gone and there's $28 million at stake?" I'd been asking myself the same question. "He'll fight," I said. "He'll lie. He'll manipulate. He'll do whatever he thinks he needs to do to get that money. And you're the only thing standing in his way." Apparently, Jenna tapped her pen against the legal pad, thinking, "We need to be prepared. If Trent finds out you have this evidence, he might try to destroy it, or discredit it, or make it disappear. He won't find out. He found out about the will conditions. Someone told him, or he guessed, or he has sources we don't know about." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street. "We need to make copies of everything, digital and physical. We need to store them in multiple locations. And we need to document everything Trent does from this point forward." She was right. I knew she was right. "I'll call Stephen," I said. Stephen Ringlow had been my friend for 20 years. He was head of security at a logistics warehouse across town, which meant he had access to surveillance equipment, secure storage, and a deeply suspicious mind that came in handy during situations like this. He answered on the first ring. "Finn, how did the will reading go?" "Complicated. Can I come by tomorrow?" "Sure. What's this about?" "I need your help with something, and I need to know it stays between us." There was a pause. Then, "Yeah, of course. Come by around noon." I thanked him and hung up. Jenna was still standing by the window. "What are you going to do about Trent?" "Follow Lorraine's instructions. Review his qualifications. Hold him to the standards she set." "And when he fails?" "Then he fails." She turned to look at me. "He's not going to accept that, Finn. You know he won't." "I know." "So what happens then?" I thought about Trent's voice in the parking garage. The old man won't actually block anything. He doesn't have the spine for it. Then he learns that I'm not as easy to push around as he thinks. Stephen's warehouse occupied 5 acres of industrial property on the east side of Columbus. The main building was a massive steel structure where hundreds of pallets of goods sat waiting for distribution. The security office was a small concrete building near the main gate. I arrived at noon on Wednesday, exactly 24 hours after the will reading. Stephen met me outside, dressed in his usual work uniform, dark pants, company polo shirt, radio clipped to his belt. "Come on in," he said. "Coffee's fresh." The security office was crowded with monitors showing camera feeds from around the property. Stephen poured 2 cups, and we sat at his desk, which was cluttered with incident reports and equipment manuals. "So," he said, "what kind of trouble are we talking about?" I told him everything. The will, the conditions, Trent's reaction, the evidence of theft that Vivian had given me. Stephen listened without interrupting, his expression growing darker with each detail. "That little—" He caught himself and took a drink of coffee instead. "Sorry, I know he's your son." "Biologically, yes, but that doesn't give him a free pass to be a thief and a liar." "What do you need from me?" I explained Jenna's concerns about document security and the possibility that Trent might try to destroy evidence. Stephen nodded along, already thinking through solutions. "I can set you up with a secure storage locker here on the property," he said. "Climate-controlled, limited access, cameras covering every angle. You can store physical copies there. For digital, I'd recommend encrypted cloud storage with 2-factor authentication. Can you help with that?" "Yeah. I've got a guy who handles our data security. He's paranoid as hell, which makes him perfect for this." We spent the next hour making copies of everything. The bank statements, Vivian's notes, Lorraine's letter, the sealed envelope I hadn't opened yet. Stephen's guy, a nervous man in his 30s named Kyle, set up the encrypted storage and walked me through the access protocols. By 2 o'clock, everything was secure and backed up in 3 different locations. "What else?" Stephen asked. "I don't know yet, but I get the feeling this is just the beginning." I was right. On Thursday morning, I got a call from Jace Arnell. "Finn," he said, "we need to talk. Can you come to my office?" "When?" "As soon as possible." I made the drive in 20 minutes. Jace met me in the same conference room where we'd held the will reading 2 days earlier. This time, there were more documents on the table. "Trent filed a formal challenge to the will," Jace said without preamble. That was fast. He hired Marcus Webb's firm. They specialize in estate disputes. Jace handed me a copy of the filing. He's claiming your appointment as executor represents a conflict of interest and that the ethical conditions are too vague to be enforceable. I skimmed the document. It was 14 pages of legal language, but the core argument was simple. Trent believed I had undue influence over Loraine and had manipulated her into adding the executor conditions. Can he win? I asked. Not likely. Your ex-wife documented her reasoning extensively. She was clearly of sound mind, and the conditions are specific enough to withstand scrutiny. Jace paused. But the challenge will tie up probate for months, maybe longer, which means no one gets any money until it's resolved. Including Trent. I set the filing down. Good. Jace raised an eyebrow. Good? If he wants to fight this in court, fine. It gives me more time to document his behavior, more time to gather evidence, more time to prove that Loraine was right not to trust him. That's one way to look at it. Jace leaned back in his chair. Just be careful, Finn. Webb's firm doesn't play nice. They'll dig into your personal life, your finances, your relationship with Loraine. They'll look for anything they can use to paint you as the bad guy. Let them look. They won't find anything. Everyone has something, Jace said quietly. I thought about that on the drive home. Everyone has something. Some secret. Some mistake. Some moment they'd rather forget. What was mine? I'd been a decent husband to Loraine until the marriage fell apart. We'd had good years and bad years like everyone else. We'd divorced because we'd grown apart, not because anyone had done anything unforgivable. I'd been a mediocre father. I could admit that. I'd worked long hours, missed school events, failed to connect with Trent the way I should have. But I'd never been cruel, never abandoned him, never stolen from him. So what could they find? I was still thinking about it when I pulled into the driveway and saw the broken window. The house looked normal from the front. Same beige siding, same black shutters. But when I walked around to the side, I saw it. My office window shattered, glass scattered across the grass. I called Jenna first. She was at work, but said she'd come home immediately. Then I called the police. The responding officer was a young woman with tired eyes and a notepad. She took my statement, photographed the damage, and walked through the house with me to check if anything was missing. My office was a mess. Papers scattered across the floor, desk drawers pulled open, file cabinet hanging ajar, but nothing was gone. My laptop was still on the desk. My wallet was still in my jacket. Even the cash I kept in the top drawer, about $200, was untouched. Whoever broke in wasn't looking for valuables, the officer said. They were looking for something specific. Documents, I said. What kind of documents? I couldn't tell her the truth. Not yet. Not without more evidence. I'm not sure, I said. I'm handling my ex-wife's estate. Maybe someone thought I had valuable information about her business. The officer made a note. We'll file a report and increase patrols in the area. Install a security camera if you haven't already, and if you notice anything else unusual, call us immediately. She left, and 15 minutes later Jenna arrived. She walked through the office slowly, taking in the damage. Trent, she said. Probably. He's looking for the evidence, the bank statements, anything that could hurt him in court. He won't find it. Everything's secure. This time, Jenna said. But he'll try again, Finn, and next time he might get desperate. She was right. Of course she was right. I called Stephen and told him what happened. He offered to install cameras around the house. Professional-grade equipment, motion-activated with cloud storage. I'll give me till tomorrow evening, he said. I'll get you set up. That night, Jenna and I moved the most important documents to the secure storage locker at Stephen's warehouse. We drove separately, taking different routes, checking for anyone following us. It felt paranoid, but paranoia kept you alive when someone else was playing dirty. Back home, we boarded up the broken window, and I sat in the living room with a baseball bat across my lap while Jenna slept upstairs. I didn't expect Trent to come back tonight, but I wasn't taking chances. Stephen finished installing the cameras on Friday evening. There were 6 of them total. Front door, back door, both sides of the house, and 2 covering the office window that had been broken. High definition, Stephen explained, showing me the app on my phone. Motion activated with instant alerts. Recordings upload automatically to secure cloud storage. If someone so much as walks past your house, you'll know about it. Thanks for this, I said. Don't mention it. Besides, I kind of want to see what your foolish son does next. Stephen? Sorry, your temporarily misguided son. Despite everything, I almost smiled. That night, I sat at my kitchen table with the sealed envelope Vivienne had given me. The one Loraine had left with instructions to open only if Trent challenged the will. Well, he'd challenged it. Time to see what she'd left me. I broke the seal carefully and pulled out the contents. There were 3 items inside. First, a typed letter addressed to me. Second, what looked like a property deed. Third, a set of photographs. I read the letter first. Finn. If you're reading this, then Trent has made his choice. He's decided to fight rather than accept responsibility. I'm not surprised, disappointed, but not surprised. What I'm about to tell you is something I've kept secret for a long time. Too long, probably, but I was ashamed, and I didn't want to believe my own son was capable of this level of deception. 3 years ago, Trent asked me to co-sign a loan for a real estate investment. He said it was a sure thing, a property that would double in value within 5 years. I trusted him. More fool me. He bought the property, a small commercial building in downtown Columbus, but never made a single loan payment. The bank came after me for the money. I paid it off quietly, about $80,000 total, to protect both our credit scores. But here's the thing. Trent never intended to keep that property. He turned around and sold it 6 months later for a significant profit. Then he pocketed the money and never repaid me. When I confronted him about it, he said I'd given him the money as a gift, that I couldn't prove otherwise. He was right. I couldn't, at least not legally. But I did document everything. The loan application, the property records, the sale, the bank statements showing my payments. It's all in here. I'm giving this to you because I want you to understand what you're dealing with. Trent doesn't just disrespect people, he uses them. He sees everyone, including his own mother, as a means to an end. If he's challenging the will, it's because he believes he can win through manipulation and legal tricks. Don't let him. You have the truth on your side. Use it. Loraine. I set the letter aside and looked at the property deed. Sure enough, it showed Loraine as co-signer on a commercial property purchased 3 years ago. The purchase price was $180,000. The photographs showed the same property, a 2-story brick building near the Short North Arts District. It looked well maintained, prime location. I pulled out my laptop and did a quick property search. The building had sold 18 months ago for $240,000. Trent had made $60,000 profit on his mother's money and never paid her back a cent. I called Jenna into the kitchen and showed her everything. She read the letter twice, her expression getting harder with each pass. He's been doing this for years, she said. Stealing, lying, using people. And Loraine kept trying to give him chances to change. She was too kind, too forgiving. Jenna put the letter down and looked at me. You can't be, Finn. You have to stop him. I will. I mean, really stop him. Not just delay the inheritance or make things difficult. You have to make sure he never gets a chance to hurt anyone else the way he hurt Loraine. I knew she was right, but part of me, a small, stubborn part, still wanted to believe Trent could be better, that somewhere under the greed and the arrogance was the boy I'd raised, the kid who used to help me fix things around the house, who laughed at bad jokes, who once told me he wanted to be just like his dad when he grew up. But that kid was gone, if he'd ever really existed at all. I'll do what needs to be done, I said. The next morning, I got a text from an unknown number. You think you've won. You haven't. Back off, or you'll regret it. I showed it to Jenna. She immediately recognized the tone. Trent, she said, that's his style. Vague threats that sound tough, but don't actually say anything actionable. Should I respond? No. Don't engage. Just save the message and document everything. I took a screenshot and sent it to Stephen with a brief explanation. He replied almost instantly. Want me to trace the number? If you can. Give me an hour. 40 minutes later, Stephen called back. Burner phone, he said. Bought at a convenience store in Worthington 3 days ago. Paid cash, so no direct link to Trent. But the tower data shows the text was sent from an area within 2 miles of his apartment. So it's probably him. Yeah, and he's smart enough to cover his tracks. Mostly. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the security cameras. I pulled up the app and saw a figure walking up my driveway. Not Trent. A woman in her 30s, dressed in business casual, carrying a briefcase. I met her at the door before she could knock. Can I help you? Mr. Harlow? Finn Harlow? That's me. She pulled a business card from her pocket and handed it to me. Marcus Webb and Associates. Estate Litigation. My name is Rachel Kim, she said. I'm with the firm representing your son in the matter of Loraine Harlow's estate. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Not without my lawyer present. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I understand, but I think you might want to hear what I have to say. Off the record. I should have closed the door, should have told her to contact Jace and scheduled a proper meeting. But I was curious. 5 minutes, I said. We sat on the front porch. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder. Mr. Harlow, my client believes there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about his mother's intentions. He wants to resolve this amicably without dragging things through years of litigation. He has a funny way of showing it. I know the will reading was contentious, but emotions were high. Everyone was grieving. She opened the folder and showed me a document. What I'm proposing is simple. You remain executor, but we establish clear, objective criteria for the inheritance transfer. No subjective ethical judgments, just concrete benchmarks that Trent can meet. Loraine's will already established the criteria, which are too vague to be enforceable. A judge will likely agree. She leaned forward slightly. But if we can come to an agreement now, we avoid months of expensive litigation. You get to honor your ex-wife's wishes. Trent gets his inheritance. Everyone wins. Except Loraine wanted those conditions in place for a reason. Did she, or did someone convince her to add them? Rachel's expression remained neutral. I'm not accusing anyone of anything, but it's not uncommon for people to exert influence during vulnerable times. Get off my property, I said. Mr. Harlow, now. She closed the folder calmly and stood. Think about it. My number's on the card. When you're ready to be reasonable, call me. I watched her walk to her car, a sleek silver sedan that probably cost more than my annual salary. She drove away slowly, like she had all the time in the world. Inside, I called Jace and told him about the conversation. They're testing you, he said, seeing if you'll crack under pressure or accept a compromise that benefits Trent. I'm not compromising? Good. Don't. And don't talk to anyone from Webb's firm again without me present. After we hung up, I sat in the living room and thought about Rachel Kim's words. Did she, or did someone convince her to add them? They were going to paint me as the manipulator, the ex-husband who couldn't let go, who saw an opportunity to control his son and took it. It was brilliant, actually. Evil, but brilliant. Which meant Trent was more dangerous than I'd given him credit for. On Monday morning, I drove to Harlow Family Bakeries' main office to meet with the management team. Lorraine's will had given me temporary oversight of the business operations until the inheritance was settled. The office was located in a modern building near the airport. Inside, everything was clean and efficient. White walls, glass doors, the quiet hum of productivity. The management team consisted of 4 people, the operations director, the head of sales, the chief financial officer, and the HR manager. They gathered in the conference room. The CFO, a woman named Linda Chen, got straight to the point. Mr. Harlow, we need to know what your intentions are. There are decisions that need to be made, and right now we're in limbo. My intention is to maintain stability until the estate is settled. No major changes. And Trent? The operations director asked. He's been calling, demanding access to financial records. He doesn't have authorization for that. He says he's the heir. He's a potential heir, pending approval. Until that's resolved, he has no authority. We spent the next hour reviewing operations. Revenue was steady. Costs were under control. The bakeries were performing well, but there was one concerning detail in the financial reports. What's this? I asked, pointing to a line item labeled Advisory Consulting, TH Solutions. Linda's expression tightened. The payment started about 2 years ago. Small amounts at first, then gradually increasing. TH Solutions, I said. Trent Harlow? The invoices list legitimate-sounding services, and they were approved by Mrs. Harlow, so we processed them. She pulled them up on her laptop. Dozens of invoices, each billing for vague consulting services, market analysis, strategic advisory, operational efficiency reviews, all paid to TH Solutions. I took photos of everything. Stop all payments to this company effective immediately, I said. Already done, but Trent has been calling daily demanding we resume. He's not getting another cent. Back at Stephen's warehouse, his guy Kyle confirmed TH Solutions was registered to Trent under a different address. He set up a fake consulting company and billed his own mother, Stephen said. That's next-level scummy. It's fraud, I said, and everyone's going to know it. I spent the next week documenting everything, every theft, every lie, every manipulation. I built a timeline showing exactly how Trent had been systematically draining resources from Loraine for years. Jenna helped organize the information. Stephen made sure everything was backed up and secure. By the following Monday, I had a complete case file. That's when Trent made his move. I got home from a meeting with Jace to find my front door standing open. The security cameras had caught everything. A figure in dark clothes and a ski mask picking the lock with professional efficiency. Inside for less than 10 minutes, then gone. I called the police, then checked the house. Nothing obvious was missing. But my office had been searched again, more carefully this time. The police came, took a report, found nothing useful. He's getting desperate, Jenna said that night. We changed the locks and added a deadbolt. He knows you have something on him. Good, let him be desperate. Desperate people do stupid things. I'm counting on it. 2 days later, Vivian called. Finn, someone broke into my office last night. Are you okay? I'm fine, but they ransacked the place. Went through every file. Did they take anything? Not that I can tell. Lucky for us, I moved everything important to a safe deposit box last week. Smart thinking. This is Trent, isn't it? Almost certainly. That boy needs to learn some consequences. He will, I said. Soon. The breaking point came on a Thursday night. I was in my office when my phone buzzed with a motion alert. The cameras showed Trent himself walking up my driveway. No mask, no disguise, just Trent, looking furious. He pounded on the front door. Dad, open up. We need to talk. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. What do you want? I want you to stop playing games. I want you to sign the papers releasing my inheritance and get out of my life. No. No? That's it? Just no? Your mother set conditions. You haven't met them. Because the conditions are impossible. She wanted you to show basic human decency. Trent laughed, a harsh, ugly sound. Decency, coming from you. What's that supposed to mean? You turned her against me, poisoned her mind while she was sick. You showed her who you were all by yourself. He took a step forward. I didn't move. Sign the papers, he said quietly, or I'll make you wish you had. Get off my property. Dad, I'm not your dad anymore. A father would have taught you better, but I'm not going to fail at protecting your mother's legacy. For a moment, I thought he might swing at me. His fists clenched, then he spun around and stormed back to his car. You'll regret this, he shouted before driving away. Inside, Jenna met me in the hallway. She'd heard everything. It's time, she said. Whatever you're planning, it's time to do it. She was right. I called Jace and told him I was ready to file formal charges. Jace scheduled an emergency hearing for the following week. In the meantime, I continued gathering evidence, building an airtight case that would expose every lie Trent had told, every dollar he'd stolen. Stephen helped me organize the surveillance footage. We had timestamps, locations, patterns of behavior that painted a clear picture of someone spiraling out of control. He's made mistakes, Stephen said, reviewing the footage. Breaking into your house twice, Vivian's office, all caught on camera from various angles. He thinks he's smarter than everyone else. That's going to be his downfall. On Tuesday, I received another text from the unknown number. Last chance. Walk away or face consequences. I didn't respond. Just saved the message and sent it to Jace. Wednesday morning, Vivian called with news. I found something else, she said. Remember those financial irregularities Loraine discovered? The transfers to TH Solutions? Yes, but there's more. I went back through older records before the business was fully digitized. Paper files from 5 years ago. And? Trent tried this before. Different company name, same scheme. Loraine caught him and made him shut it down. She never told anyone because she was embarrassed. Do you have proof? Paper trail, invoices, everything. I'm bringing it to your meeting with Jace tomorrow. Thursday afternoon, we gathered in Jace's conference room. Me, Jenna, Vivian, and Stephen. Jace spread everything across the table like pieces of a puzzle. Bank statements showing the stolen money, property records proving the real estate fraud, invoices from TH Solutions, the older documents Vivian had found, security footage from the break-ins. This is substantial, Jace said. More than substantial. This is criminal. Can we use it in the probate hearing? I asked. Absolutely. This goes directly to the ethical conditions in the will. Trent has demonstrated a pattern of fraud, theft, and manipulation spanning years. Jace looked at me seriously. But you need to understand what this means. If we present this evidence, we're not just blocking his inheritance. We're potentially putting him in prison. I thought about Loraine in the hospital. Her disappointment, her hope that somehow, despite everything, Trent would change. But he hadn't changed. He'd gotten worse. Present the evidence, I said. The hearing was scheduled for Monday at 10 a.m. That gave us 4 days to prepare. On Friday, Trent's lawyer Rachel Kim called Jace with a settlement offer. They're willing to accept a reduced inheritance, Jace told me. $15 million instead of the full 28. In exchange, Trent drops his challenge and you step down as executor. No. Finn, think about this. $15 million is still a substantial amount, which he'll use to hurt more people. No deal. They're also threatening to countersue. Claim you've been defaming Trent, interfering with his business relationships. Let them try. Jace sighed. All right, but expect them to fight dirty on Monday. That weekend, I barely slept. I went over every document, every piece of evidence, making sure we hadn't missed anything. Jenna found me in the office Saturday night, surrounded by papers. You need to rest, she said. I will, after Monday. Finn. She sat beside me. Whatever happens, you've done everything you could. You've honored Loraine's wishes. You've protected her legacy. I haven't finished yet. I know, but I need you to remember something. She took my hand. This isn't just about winning. It's about doing what's right. And you've already done that. Sunday evening, Stephen called. I've been monitoring the security feeds around your house and Vivian's office. No unusual activity, but stay alert tomorrow. Will do. And Finn, good luck. You're going to destroy him. That's the plan. Monday morning arrived cold and gray. Jenna and I dressed in our best clothes. Me in a suit I hadn't worn in 2 years, her in a dark blue dress that made her look both professional and formidable. We met Jace at the courthouse at 9:30. He was carrying 3 briefcases full of evidence. Ready? He asked. More than ready. Inside, the courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the seal of Ohio hanging on the wall behind the judge's bench. Trent was already there with Rachel Kim and Marcus Webb himself, a silver-haired man in an expensive suit who radiated calculated aggression. Trent wouldn't look at me. The judge entered, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. Judge Patricia Morrison, according to the nameplate on her bench. Good morning, she said. This is a hearing regarding the estate of Loraine Marie Harlow, specifically concerning the challenge filed by Trent Harlow against the executor appointment and conditional terms. Mr. Webb, you filed the challenge. Present your case. Webb stood smoothly. Thank you, Your Honor. This case is about a grieving son being denied his rightful inheritance by an ex-husband with ulterior motives. He laid out his argument, claimed I had manipulated Loraine, that the conditions were too vague, that Trent had been unfairly characterized. It was convincing, I had to admit. Webb was good. Then Jace stood. Your Honor, if I may present evidence that directly contradicts Mr. Webb's characterization. Proceed. Jace opened the first briefcase. What followed was 2 hours of methodical destruction. Jace started with the bank statements showing the systematic theft from Lorraine's business accounts. He displayed them on a screen, walking the judge through each transaction, each fake invoice, each fraudulent transfer. These payments went to TH Solutions, Jace explained, a company registered to Trent Harlow under a business address that doesn't actually exist. Over 2 years, he stole more than $200,000 from his mother's business. Webb objected. Alleged theft. My client provided legitimate consulting services. Then perhaps Mr. Harlow can describe those services, Jace said, because there's no documentation, no reports, no deliverables, just invoices and money transfers. Judge Morrison leaned forward. Mr. Harlow, did you provide consulting services to your mother's business? Trent stood, his face pale. I provided strategic advice, market analysis. Do you have any documentation of this work? It was mostly verbal, informal discussions. Informal discussions worth $200,000? Silence. Jace continued, presenting the property fraud evidence next. The co-signed loan, the quick sale, the profit Trent pocketed without repaying Loraine, then the older documents Vivian had found, showing Trent had tried the same scheme years earlier. This is a pattern, Jace said. Not a one-time mistake, not a misunderstanding. A deliberate, repeated pattern of defrauding his own mother. Webb was scrambling now, objecting frequently, trying to slow the momentum, but Judge Morrison overruled him each time. Finally, Jace presented the security footage. These videos show break-ins at Mr. Finn Harlow's residence and at the office of Vivian Holder, Mrs. Loraine Harlow's former business partner. In both cases, the intruders were searching specifically for documents related to this case. He played the footage. The figure in the ski mask was clearly visible, moving with purpose, searching systematically. We cannot definitively prove this is Trent Harlow, Jace admitted. However, we have other evidence. He produced phone records showing the threatening texts sent from near Trent's apartment, then testimony from Linda Chen about Trent's aggressive demands for financial records. Finally, Jace played audio from my doorbell camera, the confrontation where Trent had threatened me directly. Sign the papers, or I'll make you wish you had. The judge's expression hardened. Webb tried to recover. Your Honor, my client was emotional, grieving. Your client was threatening, Judge Morrison interrupted. And based on the evidence presented, he's also a thief and a fraud. Your Honor, I've heard enough. She looked at Trent. Mr. Harlow, stand up. Trent stood shakily. You have systematically stolen from your mother, lied to this court, and attempted to intimidate witnesses. The ethical conditions in your mother's will were not vague, they were necessary, and you have failed to meet even the most basic standards of human decency. Your Honor, please. I'm ruling in favor of the executor. The will stands as written. Furthermore, I'm ordering an investigation into potential criminal charges for fraud and theft. Trent's knees buckled. Rachel Kim caught his arm. Mr. Finn Harlow will retain full authority as executor. The inheritance will not be transferred to Trent Harlow under any circumstances until and unless he can demonstrate genuine reformation, which frankly seems unlikely given this record. Judge Morrison gathered her papers. We're adjourned. She left. The courtroom erupted in whispered conversations. Trent was staring at me with pure hatred. You did this, he said. No, I replied. You did this. Webb pulled Trent toward the exit before he could say anything else. Outside the courtroom, Jenna hugged me tightly. It's over. Not yet, I said, because I knew Trent, and I knew he wouldn't accept this. I was right. That night, my phone rang at 11:30. Unknown number. Hello? You destroyed my life. Trent's voice was raw, barely controlled. You destroyed your own life. I had everything planned. Everything. And you ruined it. Your mother tried to teach you. I tried to teach you. You refused to learn. She never loved me. Not really. She loved the business more than she loved me. She loved you enough to give you one last chance to be better. You threw it away. I'm not done, Dad. You hear me? I'm not done. Yes, you are. I hung up. Jenna was standing in the doorway. What did he say? Nothing that matters. But it did matter, because the next morning, Stephen called with urgent news. Someone tried to access the storage locker last night. Didn't get in, but they tried to bypass the security system. Trent? Has to be. He's trying to destroy the evidence. It's too late for that. The court has everything. I know, but he's desperate, and desperate people do stupid things, I finished. I know. Wednesday afternoon, Vivian called. Finn, I just got a call from Linda Chen. Trent showed up at the bakery offices demanding access to the building. When security wouldn't let him in, he tried to force his way past them. Is everyone okay? Yes. Security removed him, but he was screaming threats, saying he'd burn the place down before he let you have it. That was it. The final line. I called Jace. I need to meet with Trent, one last time. That's not a good idea. I need to end this, completely. Finn, set it up. I'll tell him I want to discuss a settlement. He'll come. Jace reluctantly agreed. The meeting was scheduled for Friday evening at an old freight yard on the east side of town. Neutral territory. Public enough to be safe, private enough to talk. Stephen insisted on coming. You're not meeting that psycho alone. I won't be alone. You'll be there. Exactly. Friday arrived with rain and wind. The freight yard was a sprawling complex of shipping containers, loading docks, and empty warehouses. We arrived early, parking near the main entrance. Stephen had brought equipment, cameras, recording devices, backup phone batteries. Document everything, he said. At 6:30, Trent's BMW pulled up. He got out slowly, looking around suspiciously. I stepped forward into the light. You came, he said. You wanted to talk. Let's talk. He walked closer, staying just outside arm's reach. He looked terrible, unshaven, red-eyed, wearing the same clothes he'd worn in court. What do you want? He asked. To give you one last chance? A chance? You just destroyed me in court. You destroyed yourself, but I'm offering you a way out. His eyes narrowed. What kind of way out? Admit what you did. Pay back everything you stole. Accept responsibility. Do that, and I'll work with Jace to structure a small settlement, enough to start over. A small settlement, he laughed bitterly. How generous. How about 28 million? You know that's not happening. It should be mine. She was my mother. And you treated her like a bank account. He lunged forward suddenly, shoving me hard. I stumbled back but kept my footing. You turned her against me, he shouted. Everything was fine until you started whispering in her ear. Everything was fine? You were stealing from her. She owed me. After everything I put up with growing up, all the times she chose that business over me, she owed me. She owed you nothing. She gave you everything. Trent's face contorted. You don't get it. You never got it. That money was supposed to be mine. I was supposed to finally prove I could be successful, important, better than you ever were. You can't buy success with stolen money. Watch me. He pulled something from his jacket, a thick folder. You think you won? You think you have all the evidence? I kept copies. I kept records of every conversation you had with her in the hospital, every time you visited, every word you said. So? So I'm going to prove you manipulated her. I'm going to appeal the ruling, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. I pulled out my phone. You mean these conversations? I pressed play. His voice filled the air, recorded from the doorbell camera weeks ago. Sign the papers, or I'll make you wish you had. Another recording. The parking garage. The old man won't actually block anything. He doesn't have the spine for it. Another. The threatening texts. The phone call from last night. Trent's face went white. You've been recording me? Everything. Every threat, every illegal action. It's all documented. You can't use that in court. I already have. He dropped the folder. Papers scattered across the wet pavement. This isn't over, he said. Yes, it is. I pulled out the final document. The one I'd been saving. Lorraine's handwritten letter. The one she'd written in the hospital 3 days before she passed. I read it aloud. If Trent ever shows who he truly is, Finn will be the only one who can stop him. I'm asking you to do what I couldn't. Teach him that actions have consequences. Don't let him destroy what I built. Don't let him hurt anyone else. Trent was shaking now, tears streaming down his face. She gave up on me, he whispered. No, she tried to save you. You gave up on yourself. He fell to his knees in the rain, surrounded by scattered papers. I walked to the BMW and opened the trunk. Inside was a briefcase. I'd suspected he'd bring evidence, documents, anything he could use against me. I was right. Inside the briefcase were forged documents. Letters supposedly from Loraine, changing her will. Bank statements altered to hide his theft. Even a fake medical report claiming she'd been mentally incompetent. Stephen joined me, camera recording everything. He was going to use these, I said. Forgery, multiple counts. I pulled out my phone and called Jace, put it on speaker. It's done, I said. Trent just confessed to everything, and we have evidence of additional forgery and fraud. Trent looked up, understanding finally dawning. You set me up. No, I gave you a chance to do the right thing. You chose this? Police sirens wailed in the distance. I'd called them before the meeting, asked them to wait nearby. 3 police cars pulled into the freight yard, lights flashing red and blue across the wet pavement. Officers stepped out, hands near their tools, assessing the situation. That's him, I said, pointing to Trent. He's been threatening me, broke into my house twice, and just attempted to use forged documents. One officer, a tall woman with sergeant stripes, walked forward. Sir, I need you to stand up and put your hands where I can see them. Trent struggled to his feet, soaked and shaking. This is entrapment. He set me up. We have recordings, Stephen said, holding up his phone. Everything's documented. The sergeant took the briefcase from me, examined the contents. Her expression hardened when she saw the forged documents. Trent Harlow? Yes. You're under arrest for forgery, fraud, and attempted theft. You have the right to remain silent. She continued reading his rights while another officer handcuffed him. Trent didn't resist. He just stared at me with empty eyes. This is the last thing your mother ever asked me to do, I said quietly.